On this, our last episode of the year, we reflect back on things we've accomplished, test cars that we've loved and maybe didn't love, and what we're most excited about in the year to come. Next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome to this, our final episode for 2018. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Jake Fisher.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
So, end of year, it's kind of time to reflect what we've done, what we're looking forward to in 2019. I don't know for you guys, but 2018 kind of flew by for me. Good year, long year, short year?
Yeah, it's all right.
It's all right. You?
Is this my job review?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, come on. How'd it go? Good
I didn't
year?
write enough things down. No, it was a good year, but it did fly by.
It
It seems
flew by.
it seems like the older you get, the faster time goes by.
I would agree with you.
Yes.
So in preparing for today, I was kind of like tabulating not only accomplishment, for ourselves, but CR, and just going through the list quickly. Expansion of used car data. Tire selector. We have a tire selector on
very
Consumer.
exciting.
It's this huge accomplishment for us. We have our TV show, our Consumer 101 TV show.
Watch on Saturday mornings.
On NBC. Level 2 autonomy ratings.
Well.
Cars that are here, if you want to elaborate a little on that.
Vehicle automation ratings.
Vehicle automation.
We're walking a little bit away from the level 2 because who knows what these levels
Right.
are.
Kind of
really.
the start of it, really, right, Jake? I mean, it's not like you've rated every system so far.
We're
but-
done.
Right.
No, but yes.
The
yes.
main ones.
Oh.
Yes, some of the main ones, talking about them and saying what's good and what's not so
And
good.
I'm sure we'll see more of that in
Yeah.
2019. The big news for us in 18 was the Tesla braking.
Yeah, right. The braking distances. When the Tesla Model 3 came out, everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine. It handles really well. And it responds really
true.
well." And then when our tests, we actually found that the brakes weren't that good. And
Yeah, it was really long stopping distances.
right, and they were able to
Like-
fix them once
right.
we raised that attention, and Tesla put the update out.
And that had never happened before, that we'd had something like that where a car could get updated over the air.
Yeah, I mean-
and especially a mechanical thing like that.
Right,
where-
and we've had lots of other situations where we've found a problem with a car and they fixed it, but it's usually much longer to fix.
Right.
Right. We also launched, which all of us get involved in. You've heard us talk about these safety features that we love: forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. This idea of how about we all call them the same thing, and that's some strategic partnerships with IHS and
Yeah, we got a bunch of people now speaking the same language, so it definitely helps with Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. I was just down actually at NHTSA talking with some people there. Looks like we're getting some buy-in there. So yeah, there's some excitement. We could actually call the things the same thing. People know what actually they have on their car.
Right, with the most important thing being for the consumer, that if everyone is calling it the same thing, now the consumers, because we know what they are,
Right.
or we can figure out what they are.
Sometimes not.
We can usually figure out by talking to the manufacturer. Okay, what does
Right.
this weird named system mean?
Right.
And then
Right.
they explain it to us. Or okay, that's actually forward collision warning, or a combo of forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. But the regular consumer is not going to know what all these different names mean.
Right.
Now, if everyone agrees on the same nomenclature,
Sure.
hopefully people will get it now.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be great? So certainly we'll be doing more of that in 2019. We've seen a ton of cars. We get not only the 50 or 60 test cars through here, but the other cars we're being exposed to. Favorites and least favorites? Mike, did you have favorites and least favorites from the test program?
Yeah, I definitely did. I mean, I'm kind of like Joe Diffie. I'm a pickup man. So
Oh, Joe Diffie.
yeah. I thought you were going to start singing the song, but it's good we didn't. But I do like driving pickups. I like how useful they are, and you just kind of assume that they're not going to ride that great, because
They're going to be trucky.
because
they're
they're
trucks.
designed to haul a lot, big loads and tow big trailers, heavy trailers. But the Ram 1500, the 2019 Ram 1500, is just a fantastic truck. You get in it and you drive it, and it drives honestly more like a good SUV than a pickup truck, because we're going to get technical here, but because it's the only full-size pickup with a coil spring rear suspension. If you know anything about pickups, they have always had leaf spring rear suspension, which is kind of old school technology, but it just flat works for towing and hauling. So But the Ram has this coil spring rear suspension. It rides really nicely. But then beyond that, the interior it looks better than all the other full-size trucks. The infotainment system is great.
Right.
Ours has this the 5.7 liter V8 with the mild hybrid assist. So it has lots of power and it's smooth. And it has a great V8 sound. I mean, that's what you also really want in a pickup is you want the pickup to sound good. And so, I mean, it really checks off all the boxes other than it doesn't have the standard safety systems that, like forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking. You can get those on some of the trims, but like the Ford F-150, the 2019 Ford F-150 makes forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking standard.
Right.
But,
And we hope to see that more,
But I love driving that truck. I mean, it's just
we noticed.
it's just a nice truck. It's just a nice truck to drive.
Yeah.
It's a nice truck because it doesn't drive like a truck.
That is part of it, yeah.
Oddly, that's true, but it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
You? Do you have a favorite?
I don't think I'm doing very well. I was actually you let me know what I chose last year because
I did a little research.
He did a little research for me because I'm very lazy about it. But it turned out last year my favorite was the Cadillac CT6, which obviously I'm doing great because General Motors has announced they're getting rid of it because nobody likes that car. So clearly what I like doesn't really matter a whole lot. I mean. Actually, this last year, one of the cars I really do like driving a lot is the Hyundai Veloster.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that really kind of blew me away for a couple of reasons. One, not a whole lot of cars kind of in that category anymore. Kind of like a small, inexpensive, fun to drive kind of car. I think what really blew me away was the kind of the Honda Civic Si better than the Honda Civic Si, right? I mean, that great shifter and just really fun to drive. But I'm not giving up on the CT6 because, I mean, one of the things I always liked about the CT6 was that Super Cruise system, and that's not dying, I should make that clear.
Cars.
It's not dying with the CT6.
It's not dying with the CT6, it'll be in other Cadillacs or whatever. And actually just that Super Cruise system, which is, honestly, if you look at what we tested this last year, we tested the Super Cruise system. We didn't do that before. Right. And yeah, it was the number one system out there in terms of not semi-autonomous because they're not really autonomous, but it's vehicle automation systems. So these systems, they're supposed to be like, oh, well, computers don't get tired, right? It's true what they say. You kind of get more relaxed because now you're not steering, it's as much and you're doing all these things. You get more relaxed, but you could go to sleep.
That's why when I'm tired, I don't drive like this. I don't have like when I'm tired, it's both hands on the wheel for sure and, trying to just do anything to keep myself
ultra attentive,
exactly.
Right,
because
exactly.
if you a lot of people like to drive in this relaxed position anyway, which
Rest
is
in your
just silly.
Right, you're gonna
But
be
when you kind of do anything that relaxes yourself when you're already tired, that's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
So
that's
anyway, I'm sorry to
what,
interrupt.
No, but that's exactly right, and that's what I found. So then so earlier this month I went down and so my son it was his 15th birthday, and it was actually my birthday too because we share a birthday.
Oh, that's
and
so
on the
neat.
exact same day, they had this really great concert in Brooklyn, which had Muse and Death Cab for Cutie, all these bands, amazingly
bands we've never heard of.
that me and my 15-year-old like
Dirk
too.
Bentley?
No,
Bentley.
no country.
Or not
music.
Joe Diffie.
I don't know who
other
they
bands.
are, so I think we're even. But so like we almost had to go because it was like our birthday and like all these bands that we were like. But the problem is the concert gets done at midnight in Brooklyn, which is like 2 hours drive back home. So I'm like, what do I do? So I took the Super Cruise and I went down there and I'm like, okay, let's try this out. I try it with the Super Cruise on, I try it without. And it is easier to drive and it's 1:30 in the morning. I'm driving on these, roads with nobody on them. But it was relaxing. But it's like since I had that camera there, making sure my eyes were open, I had that safety. Like I wasn't concerned that, if God forbid my eyes did close, the thing would go beep beep beep, and buzz my seat and slow down safely and all these different things. But it was really good and it made a difference. So
Yep.
yes,
That's great.
good system.
That's great.
What about you?
Protections. Oh, so I'm not as fun probably, but I actually had two.
I'm going to guess you're very practical.
Yeah, I'm very practical as usual. So the first one and I kind of had to go through the list. There wasn't one that like jumped out at me that I'm like, oh, that was a great car, and I was fighting to get in it all the time. But one I really enjoyed was the Corolla Hatch.
Okay.
So I just thought that was fun. everything good about the Corolla, but kind of cooler looking and a little more versatile in terms of, cargo. I always have stuff and the kids and horse stuff. So I really like that
and
car.
Great handling.
I enjoyed, and great handling. So it was very fun, but still to the good.
Well, I mean, it's not that uncool. I mean, let's not forget. Everyone forgot, but in the mid '80s, the Corolla Hatch of the mid '80s, the Hachiroko 886, is a cult car today.
See?
And that's a Corolla hatchback. So
I was just ahead of my time.
You're just way ahead of your
I
time.
was. And then, yes, to the totally practical side, what I would buy if it were really me going out to buy a car and not just driving a car would be something like the Kia Sorento. And that car people are kind of fighting over here a little bit because it's got great room, reliable, recommended, just a really nice overall package. Certainly a great family car.
Easy and nice to drive, which we're not finding in tons of vehicles. There's always seems to be some kind of low-speed drivability issues, and or the transmission does something weird, or the CVT does something weird, or the engine's loud. And here it's just a really nice SUV.
Right, and you just made me think of something else. It didn't frustrate me. It didn't have controls that were frustrating me, which usually reels me right back to I don't like that car anymore. They can easily ruin it by a horrible infotainment package, and that doesn't have that. So you just made me think of that too.
I don't know why you get to have two vehicles whenever I choose to.
Because I'm the hostess. And I get to call the shots today. So anyway, so least favorite.
Yeah.
Least favorite car.
Ford EcoSport. I think that vehicle was a real letdown for me. Ford can do SUVs pretty well when they want to. And this thing, not only does it look kind of goofy, and it has these this really huge space between the tires, between the wheel wells.
Needs a bigger tire.
It looks like
it
has tiny little wheels, even though it really doesn't. It has a odd side hinged tailgate, which just doesn't make any sense. Everyone else has a normal hatchback thing. And it's just ridiculously slow. I mean, it does 0 to 60 in 10.7 seconds with the up-level engine. It does have, it's one strong suit, if you can call.
It's cute.
Well, I don't think it's cute, but it does have pretty good handling. And so it's one of those vehicles. It's funny because you get in it and you sit kind of high up in it. It feels like it has this high center of gravity, and you throw it into a turn, and it actually does pretty well.
Holds its own,
Has, some steering has some actual feedback, which again, something we're not seeing too much anymore these days.
It's kind of based off the Fiesta. I mean, this is what frustrates me about this car, and I'm with you on this. But it's like they took the Fiesta, which no one was really buying because it's this little cheap, goofy car, but it handled well.
Right.
And they just kind of raised it a bit, put some four-wheel drive on it, and charged an extra $10,000. It's like, really? Are we that gullible that, you put some body cladding on it and then it's worth $10,000 more?
No, I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
No.
Oddly, and you can look right here, I had the same car as a least favorite before we go
Great
to
minds think alike.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Jake?
And again, I may have told this story, but it is the one car where I actually found merging to its slowness, or, pulling out into already moving traffic. I found it disconcerting. Oh my gosh, this car isn't going to get out there in time. And I haven't felt that in a long time. I mean, cars that you have to leave a little more room or you need to really launch it. This car just didn't do it. So that was my worst too. So I don't know if you had a different.
I can't just copy both of you.
You can't.
But I'm going to throw it a little bit different. In terms of, it's not the worst car, but in terms of value, it is absolutely the worst. Yeah. And that is the Lexus Ls. And the Lexus, look, we've tested a lot of Lexus LSs over the years, and they've always been unbelievably luxurious and roomy and quiet and fast and easy to live with, really just, very simple. And this vehicle, they kind of screwed up most of it. So, it's expensive. They kept that. Everything was around $100,000. It's not, though. The rear seat doesn't have much headroom. For all that room and all that length.
Lots of leg room.
I guess that's what I mean.
There's leg room, but it's my head's on the roof in the back. It rides. It doesn't ride well. The controls are just infuriating.
Speaking of frustrating
controls,
controls,
the worst thing about the car.
They ruined it,
I actually don't mind driving the car. It has this turbo V6, whereas the V8 was really nice. And it's not as nice with this turbo V6, but it will get up and go. Doesn't sound as good as the V8. It's not smooth like the V8 was. But I actually don't, I think it drives okay. Again, you're putting up with some things you shouldn't have to put up with, though. You shouldn't have to put up with a stiffer ride. But the controls are what just infuriate me. It's a car that I get in, and I'm just as soon as I get it to where I can just drive it, and then I try not to touch anything the rest of the
You
drive.
don't want to.
Because
crazy.
it's confusing to try to do anything because I always overstep whatever I'm trying to move with the control pad.
It's not even
sensitive.
confusing. It's just even when
I can't
you know
do it.
You know what to do, but you're like it's like
I
a
can't
game.
get it there, and it's never where I thought it was.
No,
It always
exactly.
looks like it's over here
It's
on the
moving
screen, but
around.
it's somewhere else. And
But the driving experience, like I don't disagree. It's okay.
Right.
But okay is fine for $25,000 family sedan.
Not for
Okay is not okay for
you're
$100,000.
absolutely right.
I mean, that Audi A8, that's the way the thing should drive.
Right.
You know, just like this vault, you know, and solid and ride great. And it doesn't
really
have any of that.
interesting to see how that car does sales-wise. You know,
Right.
like what happens to their current owners, and you know if they can attract any new owners to it.
Well, if they're loyal LS, and again, that used to be one of our favorites.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, "What would you do?"
keep your old
Hopefully,
LS.
keep your old LS. Yeah.
Or buy an Audi A8.
Yeah. So kind of changing topics a little bit, and you touched on it talking about the CT6, is these announcements in 2018 from Ford and General Motors and a couple of even FCA, Fiat Chrysler cars that are going away, that they're going to drop sedan-type vehicles.
Yep.
Kind of on that, are there any of those that you're going to miss? That you're really going to miss?
Well, you know, we kind of this sort of has to do with what we just talked about. We talked about the Ford Ecosport
Right.
and how it's based on the Fiesta. Well, the Fiesta is going away, and I'm not going to miss the Fiesta, but I am going to miss the Fiesta ST,
Right.
which was the hot hatch version of the Fiesta, and it has a turbo 4-cylinder with 197 horsepower. Only comes with a manual transmission. Great steering, great handling. It's one of those cars that Ford did a really good job with it in terms of it's not the ride is pretty stiff, but the engine isn't very loud unless you really are on the throttle. Then it sounds really, really good.
Yep.
But I mean, it is just a fun car to drive,
Yep.
and I'm really going to miss that because I think we need more cars like that out in the world these days. you know?
Yep.
So.
Can I get wonky for a little bit?
Sure.
So here's what really kills me is Ford. What's happened? So not too long ago, Ford was really in a partnership with Mazda. And Mazda, they work together on chassis and they work together on powertrains. And the current Ford Fusion and the Fusion and the Focus, which are going away, they are great handling, driving vehicles. They ride well, they do a lot well. The thing that's really missing on these vehicles, though, it's the powertrain, right? The Ford Fusion, I mean, it's not really competitive in terms of acceleration, in terms of fuel economy. You look at the Focus, they had that terrible transmission.
The power shift.
The power shift that never worked right and terrible reliability problems. I mean, if you had those vehicles and you go back in time and they didn't have that divorce from Mazda, and you had Skyactiv powertrains in both of those vehicles, they would have been so competitive. They would have been such great options. I think it's really the powertrains that really let down those vehicles. Otherwise, I mean, styling was good, room was good, they rode well. It's just too bad.
I think you're right. Yeah, it is too bad. And I also put down an honorable mention of one that I'll miss, which is the Cadillac CT6. I actually really like that car. I think
A lot of
it's a
people
really
do, yeah.
nicely done
Even
car.
without Super Cruise,
Some
right?
people would say it's the best car of last year.
Right.
There you go.
Not smart people, but somebody would say.
With or without Super Cruise, I think it's just a really nice driving car. It's comfortable, it's quiet, it has good power, and handles pretty well for how big it is. And it's just kind of sad that it's going away.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is that I suppose with the CTS, it's almost a little bit redundant.
Right.
That's the only issue.
I'm a little, and I didn't really pick one. Again, I'm the host, so I don't have to. But the whole philosophy concerns me a little bit in that I get the whole SUV appeal. I totally get it. I just said mine was the Kia Sorento. If I was buying, I would probably be buying an SUV. Right. But I do think there's people that are sedan loyal and that's their preference. And I'm just concerned that it's just going to drive those people to European cars or Japanese cars, and that I'm concerned because it's all the domestics about.
It's all driving
shifting.
people to SUVs.
I know.
But the silver lining is that those SUVs are not really SUVs. Those SUVs are just station wagons. Let's be realistic.
Right, and all
wagons,
the things we used to be concerned about have virtually gone away with those cars. Super safe and versatile, and
Yeah.
It is funny though when you go out into the Consumer Reports parking lot and you walk in the morning.
Yep.
And it's almost all SUVs,
Right.
which is a little sad. But I get what you're saying, Jake. That they're basically cars anyway. But But I'm with you that I do like a good old sedan or
so
hatchback or,
It'll be interesting to see when we're sitting here in 2 years if they've, jumped back on this decision.
No, you think they're not coming back?
No, but I mean, to get to that point, I mean, you look at some of the fuel economy that are, I mean, I mentioned powertrains, right? I mean, you look at the Fusion and the Focus. I mean, there are small SUVs that are getting just as good fuel economy as the Focus. There are mid-size SUVs that are getting just as good fuel economy as the Ford Fusion. So it's like they're almost getting more for, and they're just as quick too. So they're wagons.
I know.
The rest of the world
there'll
has
be
wagons.
some loyalists.
Yeah.
There.
Well, and the other thing is
absolutely.
And they're going to have to find another option.
Right. And look, they're not all going away, just from a few manufacturers. So.
Sure, that's totally true.
Right. That's my concern, I think, is it's all the domestic. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Stay tuned in 2 years and we'll see where we're at. So that kind of is the looking back. Obviously, we got a new year coming. Mike, you were just out in LA at the auto show.
Yep.
There's a bunch of LA, we had a lot of really cool introductions there, which I don't always remember.
Right.
Maybe there's a shift to LA from Detroit or anything. But anything there car-wise that you were super excited about?
You know what? I don't want to talk about LA. I want to talk about the Detroit Auto Show, which is coming up.
Okay.
Because I'm excited about the Toyota Supra, the 2020 Toyota Supra. Although,
which is coming in Detroit?
It's going to be at the Detroit Auto Show, its first real appearance. Keep in mind, those of you who watched the show know I had a second-gen Toyota Supra, which I loved. This was a car that, mine was an 85 or 85 and a half, and, it had a 2.8-liter inline-six. It was just a super smooth, super sweet engine. Again, not a lot of power back then, only about 160 horsepower. Wonderful sports seats. It had the lumbar support was pumped up with a bladder, and it had the stereo had this graphic equalizer. You could do all this adjusting.
So 80s.
It's so 80s. I love that. The hood
it.
had this power bulge, had these big fenders and pretty wide tires for the time. Anyway, I loved that car.
So just the name.
And of course everyone knows the fourth generation Toyota Supra was the big daddy. I mean, that was the one that, was the twin turbo inline six. And of course, a lot of people switched them over to single turbo, and made like 700 horsepower, even 1,000 horsepower for drag racing. And that engine was just solid. I mean, it was so strong. Anyway, so I was really excited about the new Supra. It's going to be a shared platform with the new BMW Z4 that is coming out. And the bummer about that is that it's still going to have an inline six, but it's BMW's turbo inline six, which again, that shouldn't be a bad thing because that's a great engine, but it's not Toyota's engine. And for some reason, as a Supra fan, that bothers me. You know what I mean? And from what I've seen of the spy photos of the car, it looks kind of like a Z4 profile. So I'm just a little, and they're talking right now about an 8-speed automatic. They haven't said yet whether there's going to be a manual transmission. So I'm just a little, I was excited, and I didn't mean to say that I wasn't excited about anything at LA.
No,
I will
that was
say,
just my intro.
if you look at our coverage from LA.
It's about what you're excited for 19, not necessarily LA.
If you look at our coverage from LA, what I liked about the LA show is that there was a lot of just normal cars for normal people. And, I don't know if you want to talk about, your favorite cars that you saw us cover from LA, because I saw in your notes you listed some like the...
I listed 3.
Okay.
No cheating.
Yeah, I cheated.
But anyway, so to wrap it up, I'm excited about the Supra, but I'm tempered because I'm not sure it's going to be the Supra that I wanted
there's something
it to be.
about that. You're right about the Toyota engines. It's like there's this precision and high revving that they're just known for. I mean, like my MR2, which I still have my MR2, which again, from the factory revs, red line over 7,500 RPM, and it's just like this precision, just high revving. I mean, even like the LFA has that,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the Lexus LFA, and it's like just look. BMW makes great powertrains and all, but it's like there's something about Toyota that just is this precision, high revving, feel that you may not get elsewhere.
I was very fortunate to drive an LFA. This is the V10 that they made for a very short period of time, very expensive. That was an amazing car, an amazing engine. And you're right, when Toyota wants to build an awesome enthusiast engine, they can do it. And so I'm a little bummed about that.
Okay, so Supra. We'll see. Maybe it won't disappoint.
Maybe.
You? And looking forward to anything?
Well, actually, you mentioned the Supra. I mean, there are rumors about an MR2 coming back.
Are you serious?
There are rumors. I think they're just messing with me at this point because there'll probably be some
That would make your decade.
It'll be like a Prius, like it'll be a hybrid or something. I'm sure it'll be disappointing, but that would make my decade. But
if it's the same, it could be a Supra thing going on.
it's going to be a
Shared
Right.
platform thing,
Yeah, it'll be a BMW i3, you know, and just with a different
calling
body
the
on
MR2.
it. And yeah, it'll be terrible. So I have no idea. No, what I'm interested in is the new kind of breed of electric cars coming out from the established automakers, right? I mean, look, you always have to think about that Tesla Model S came out in 2012. I mean, it's been around for a long time, and it's like still no one else has got a competitor.
That luxury,
Right. I mean, there's still not there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's amazing credit for Tesla. I mean, maybe they wasn't quite finished when they came out. Who knows? But I mean, the point is that
maybe the others were waiting to see if it was a success.
Maybe they were
before
waiting.
they
I honestly
followed
think
up.
they
But it's
were.
like-
I think they weren't 100% believing in it. you know?
Right.
just what a
Who would
huge
buy this?
gap. Could you imagine if like the iPhone came out and like 7 years later they came out with Android? I mean,
Right.
it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
But it's like we are finally getting there, right? I mean, we got the Audi, the Audi E-Tron. We got the Porsche Taycan, which they finally. I don't like the car anymore because they actually had to come up with a video to tell you how to pronounce it. You've already named it wrong if you have to do that. But of course, there's an Audi version, the E-Tron GT,
E-Tron GT,
right?
yeah, which looks fantastic.
So I mean, it's really interesting to me to say, okay, same idea, let's get this, kind of a four-door or an SUV. Let's see what they can do.
Absolutely.
And I'm really interested to see if they could really take on Tesla. Can they do it better? Can they maybe not as much? I'm
I
fascinated.
wonder if the established names, like you say, have the aura that the Tesla does. It'll be interesting.
I mean, Porsche and Audi have aura.
They do.
They have
They
aura.
do.
And they also have R&D. They have,
Right.
they have full R&D facilities, which means that they're gonna,
Right.
always when a new Tesla comes out, it always feels like they're using the new owners as kind of part of their test bed,
Sure.
And that's not going to happen with Porsche.
No,
That's not
no,
going to
no.
happen with Audi. It's a little bit of a bummer that these cars we're seeing are going to be really expensive, but you've talked about it before. It's going to trickle down, and we've already seen like the Chevy Bolt. We've seen some cheaper electric cars.
can be done.
It can be done.
right.
But so we'll start with these, and we'll see, can these guys take it right to the Model S? Are they, how do they fare?
I wonder if some of the Porsche and Audi enthusiasts only bought Teslas because there wasn't
Very
those,
possible.
that
Absolutely.
they'll sell their Tesla and go pick up one of these.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
I'm sure they stole a lot of customers.
Yeah. The other mainstream cars that, again, I wasn't at LA, but the ones that stuck out in terms of, that's going to be great. The all-wheel drive Prius, we talked about that.
Yep.
I think
Yes,
that's a cool
yes.
addition. From somebody who needs all-wheel drive, I was like, that's a cool alternative.
Yep.
People have been waiting for that for
people
years.
who've been
For
waiting.
years.
The Hyundai Palisade, again, I think
Yep.
I've mentioned, I had a friend who had the old Veracruz. I think they need that larger SUV.
Yep.
And I still like the Kia Soul. And I think the Kia Soul is a great car for older drivers, my parents.
Absolutely.
People like that. And I'm glad they're kind of
I
refreshing
recommended
that.
a Soul to my parents.
Yes.
For the next, of course, they bought a Mustang convertible. They don't listen
They're
to me.
about the same.
Same thing. Easy to get into. Good in the winter. Whatever.
It's easy to get into
that's
when
funny.
the top's down.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, that's funny. And then, so those are kind of things we're looking forward to.
Right.
I think there's other things happening here at the track. Maybe you can touch a little on stuff that we're venturing and what are you excited about here
all
for 19?
Under embargo,
Yeah.
But no, when we were looking at, doing lots of new things for
Right.
sure. I mean, maybe a little bit transforming the track a bit to deal
Keep
with
up.
connected
That's what I mean,
vehicles,
yeah.
autonomous vehicles. There's some plans in the works.
We have a new building, so I don't know if we said that on
New
the show.
safety building?
New
Tire
tire
safety
slash child seats. We're literally outgrowing ourselves in terms of storage and efficiency. So a new building's being built right now, better access to the track, more room, more efficiency. The tires and child seats will move there, so that's super exciting for us. Again, trying to keep up. So there's a lot
And again,
more.
I don't know if people haven't tried out the tire selector on our website, you really need to
it's
go
pretty
try it
slick,
out
yeah.
because it is a really cool way to figure out what tires you should get for your vehicle.
Right. So-
Right. My wife will have to look for some snow tires for her all-wheel drive Prius.
Yes. Is she going to get one?
I think she is.
Yeah, see, finally. So yeah, she'll be excited, as I am, about the all-wheel drive Prius. So that kind of wraps up, 2018. So looking forward to 2019. We thank you all for watching all year. Keep your questions coming. We didn't do questions today, but we love them. TalkingCars@iCloud.com, especially video. Wishing you all a happy, healthy 2019.